Welcome to the highly anticipated third season of the Single Dads Unplugged, where we embark on the profound exploration of the unique challenges and triumphs faced by single fathers. This season, we delve deep into the realm of emotional resilience, unraveling the layers of strength that single dads exhibit as they navigate the complexities of parenthood on their own, from coping with the emotional rollercoaster of solo parenting to finding solace in unexpected places. Our episodes aim to inspire and empower single fathers on their journey. In Season 3, our focus extends beyond the individual, shining a spotlight on the invaluable bonds forged between single dads and their children. We bring you heartfelt stories of connection and growth, showcasing the remarkable ways in which these fathers nurture and strengthen the familial ties that define their lives. Moreover, we address the crucial intersection of financial and emotional well-being, offering practical insights and advice to help single dads not only survive, but thrive in their role as primary caregivers. As we navigate the intricate landscape of co-parenting challenges, our aim is to provide a supportive space for single fathers to share experiences and glean wisdom, fostering a sense of community and resilience in the face of adversity.
Welcome to Single Dads Unplugged, Season 3. I'm your host, Chiappini Pagati. This season is about emotional resilience for single dads, and we are all about empowering dads become good single fathers to their kids and form effective relationships with their children. With me today, I've got Miss Monica Chiappini from Clifford, Levin. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you so much for having me.
Maybe tell us a little bit what you do at Clifford Levin and the work that you do around legal advice for parents.
Sure. So I'll start off by saying Clifford Levin is a labour firm, but I was brought in the firm to head up the civil department. It's now branched into family law. So that's mostly what I specialise in. It's something I really enjoy. So that is currently what I'm doing. And a lot of the time it is single dads who are coming to see me. So when I got asked to do this, I was very excited to be a part of it.
I remember I was speaking to you 2-3 weeks ago. You were very excited about our topics. And I want to start with this. Do a lot of parents out there know what legal recourse they have if they reach a deadlock around parenting, financial issues? And is this widely known in the community out there?
So I don't actually think so. I think it is something that could be broadened. I think it should be information that is made a lot more publicly and a lot easier to access, because the number one question when I have dads in my office is, I'm a dad. What rights do I have? Do I have any rights?
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that a lot of the time dads don't even know that they have rights.
So there's a lot of education, maybe through our network and maybe other support groups like ours, to really educate single parents or single dads or even parents out there about what is available for them as a recourse. Yeah.
Yes. I think that's very important, the education, and because a lot of dads are also in a position where they can't afford to drop thousands on legal fees. So it's nice where they can have an option to go and find out the information that they need to know.
Yeah, I like that. First question for you, Monica, is this is about the legal aspects of single fatherhood. When it comes to legal aspects of parenthood, what key considerations should single dads take into account, especially around custody arrangements, visitation rights, and those kinds of things? This is in a scenario where a single father and a single mom don't live together.
Yes. So that's firstly branched, I would say, into two categories. You obviously get your single dads that were formerly married to the mother of the child, or they have never been married. So obviously dads that were married, rights are automatic.
Yes.
They are co-parents.
Because they are actually stated in the decree, yeah?
Yes, in our Children's Act. So I think there's not a lot of, I think most people know that it's just an automatic right.
Yeah.
But the problem comes to when the parents were not married. So I think what a lot of dads don't know is that if the mom and the dad were in a committed relationship at the time of the child's birth and were living together, they are afforded the same rights as married parents.
So that's for the same. So that's very important, because I posted something from Judge Judy saying that both parents have got the equal rights to the child, regardless who has custody or regardless whether the father is providing or not. I mean, just repeat that. So do these legal rights have to be documented somewhere when two parents are not co-parenting or are not together? Sorry.
So when the parents are not together.
Living together, yeah?
Yeah, so like I said, if they were at the time of the child's birth, those rights are automatic in terms of our Children's Act.
Yeah.
When the parents are sort of, I would say, ad idiom, they're in agreement and
Sure.
they've got something going.
Even if it's informal.
Even if it's informal, I wouldn't
Okay.
suggest it.
All right.
But obviously the first thing to always put into place, more in situations where the parents are at a bit of a deadlock,
Sure.
is you want to start looking at putting in co-parenting plans.
Co-parenting plans, yes.
So,
that's good.
yeah, these
How
agreements.
does that look like? So do you have to have an attorney overseeing that process around that? How does it work?
So you don't specifically have to have an attorney. I would say, especially when the parents are on good terms, it's a lot
Okay.
easier to communicate.
So you
and
just
say-
communicate.
Yeah. So basically, these are legal documents that are drawn up. They can be done without the assistance of an attorney.
Yeah.
And basically, this agreement will make provision of maintenance, who's paying what for the child, is dad contributing, who is child going to live with. Majority of the cases, it is that the child will have primary residence with the mom, but then the contact will be split. For instance, 1 week at mom, 1 week at dad.
Yeah.
You know, that type of thing. So that's everything that
But
can be arranged.
if you reach a disagreement or a deadlock, could you approach a court or an attorney to help facilitate that arrangement?
Yes, of course. So definitely the first approach I would suggest taking before going to the children's court is probably to approach the family advocate. So these services are free. They are offered by state.
Sure.
They are centered all around the country. You go and you can get the family advocate to intervene. This process involves interviews with both parents by the
Yeah.
family advocate, interviews with the child, and essentially the family advocate will be the one, after a bit of investigation, to be the one to say, this is what I suggest, this is my report, I think you should compile a co-parenting agreement based on these arrangements.
Okay.
And if the parents are happy with that, they can even then register that agreement with the family advocate, which is almost, it's in effect an order of court.
It's an order of course. So
Basically.
if one parent actually disobeys the order, obviously there's a recourse to approach
Yeah,
the court to
there's
actually
legal
force them
implications.
to comply. Yes?
That's exactly.
Yeah, I want to touch on this child support. Legal issues related to child support can be very intricate. Would you share with us some of the arrangements that two parents can enter into around supporting the child, whether it's about day-to-day needs, school, those kinds of things? Does that have to be in a legal framework as well?
Look, it usually is suggested. I don't suggest leaving it open-ended. So I think, that's when parents should try come together and communicate, where one is saying, this is what the expenses are. Can you contribute to half of the schooling? Can you contribute, for instance, to medical expenses? How much?
Yeah, I'm glad to mention medical because someone was asking me that, but how do we decide whether the child is on the dad's medical aid or my medical aid? And how does that gets discussed? Sorry to interrupt.
So that's also again completely, that's something that can be worked out between the communication of the parents. Let's say child goes on dad's medical aid, and then mom isn't contributing half of that. That's okay. It can then be worked into the arrangement in another way. Maybe, for instance, then the mom will agree to pay for all of the child's school uniform, in exchange for the dad paying the totality of the medical aid. Just, that's why cooperation between the parents, I know it's not always possible and it is difficult, but it's so important where possible.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't affect the child.
Exactly.
Because, whether it's 50-50, 100-100, but it has to always support the child.
Yes.
Let's talk estate planning. In the context of estate planning and the long financial future of the child, what kind of arrangements can be entered into around those kinds of things, especially when it relates to prioritizing stability in that family. Are there nuggets, ideas that you could share with us, Monica?
Yeah, I think this is actually a very important topic to touch on, because a lot of the time parents, they come together and they have these agreements, but no one ever thinks of if one of the parents die, and it is a horrible thing to talk about, but things happen.
But it does happen.
And you want to make sure your child is covered for in
Yes.
that, obviously we hope that never happens,
Sure.
but I would always suggest number one is have a will in place.
A will.
An up-to-date will.
Hallelujah. That's
Yeah,
important.
definitely.
Even as young as I was talking to my friend over there in the car as we were driving here, that plan better, and the will you have to write, as long as you have a child or children, you have to write it as early as you can. Please
Exactly.
proceed.
Okay, so there's number one, a will, very important. There's nothing wrong. Rather safe than sorry is what I always say. And also make sure that that will is up to date,
And keep updating it,
Of
because
course,
it's
your
never
child
static.
is growing, your
child
child
is
is
growing, things
aging, you
change.
aging, things
Yeah.
change, of course. So an
Yeah.
up-to-date will is always very important. That's another thing, that it doesn't have to cost a lot. You can sort of do yourself, as long as you're following the terms in terms of our law. That's perfect. And the next very important one, where dads will often say, okay, I'll do my will, no problem, but I
Yeah.
actually don't have that much to leave to my child, so I'm a little bit stressed.
It's a bit stress. So
What do I
do
do
you
in
put
that?
in there?
Yeah, what do I do in
What
that
do you put in
situation?
there? Yeah.
So there, I recommend a life policy. Very important.
So that's an alternative. Yeah.
It's a very, I think, affordable way to make sure your child is covered. You make sure that they are the beneficiary, paid out. You can make provisions for how they'll be paid out. So I think that is a very nice and
Or you could
affordable
have
option.
both, life
Oh,
policy
even better.
and a will.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, even if you don't
better.
have a big balance sheet or a big estate to leave behind, but it's always advisable to have both, and then you can update it as you go along.
Yes, of course.
Are there specific legal measures that you would consider other than those two, in terms of savings for the child and just protecting the child for financial stability? Are there other things that you would advise single dads out there to consider?
Definitely. So this is now touching back on the will. Let's say you do have a bit of a bigger estate, or you do have some savings. You don't specifically just want to hand a lump of cash,
Yes.
to the person looking after your child or to the child himself. So we can then look up at setting trusts.
Okay. Trust.
Which, yes.
Family trust. as an
Family
example.
trust, of course, which then, can stipulate exactly how it must be paid out, the monthly amount, when the cap will be, is there any interest accruing? So there's a lot of options to look at that, can regulate it for the time period, because obviously child support carries on definitely until a child is 18, and even in some circumstances beyond that, when the child is not self-supporting, when they're going to university.
Yes.
So you want to make sure they're covered for longevity.
Longevity, yeah, as
Yes,
long as
so
possible.
you know those are other options to look at to make sure that that money is not being misused by people who are in control of it, and that your child, your contributions to your child will be covered and
Will be
secure.
covered and
Yes.
secure. You touched briefly before we went on set around parents coming to your office for advice. What are the common pitfalls or issues that dads or single parents, generally speaking, come to your office for, especially as it relates to child support?
So a lot of the time, it will be dad saying, mom has cut off contact because she's cut off contact because she's angry and
She's upset.
she's upset, she wants more money, and then she cuts off contact with dad.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of the time, majority of the case, I would say,
Wow.
that dads are coming to my office and
And they're
saying,
seeking
help.
advice.
Yeah, I haven't seen my
I still
son, my
wanna see.
daughter. Yeah, of
Wow.
course.
Okay.
So it is a sad reality, but it happens often that children are used as bargaining chips, where mom will say,
or they used to spite. They use the kids or
Yes.
access that to spite the
yes,
father.
past issues in the relationship,
issues.
wanting more money. It's horrible, and it's illegal as well. No mom can ever, or any parent for that fact.
So what's the basic advice for that? I mean, I'm Stimby, so my ex doesn't want me to see my child. I'm stuck.
So
What
that is
could I do?
the best then time to approach an attorney when the
Yeah.
parents aren't on good terms. It's always nice to have an attorney come in, because then you have, like, I would almost say, a third party level-headed where no
Yes,
emotions are
very
involved.
independent,
Yes,
objective, yeah.
because obviously when mom and dad are talking to each other, emotions can raise and they want to
Absolutely.
scream
It
at each
happens all
other.
the
There's
time.
past hurts, and you
Yeah.
don't want that.
You don't want that.
So a lot of the time it's nice, just before running to court, approach an attorney if you
Okay.
can. let that attorney come on record, say we are on record, we want to, have a proper co-parenting plan in place. Let's get that contact regular.
So that can be done with the attorney, not the court.
Yeah.
Just to arrange that co-parenting plan.
Yes.
It's very important. It comes up a lot in these discussions, by the way.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So your local attorney can draw up the agreement, then it makes provision for a lot of things. Literally, it can
access, visitation,
the amount of money, sports,
Yeah.
decision making, even choices, for schools.
Is it?
Where one parent decides the school, where the other parent doesn't want that. So this type of agreement can even make provision for joint decision making, which I think is very important.
It's very important because this co-parenting plans or parenting plans are important. A friend of mine said her ex just changed the school for the child without him knowing, and it happens to be more expensive than the previous school, and he just gets a bill from a new school and he didn't know about it. He says, what's going on? And by the way, the mom doesn't have financial muscle to basically afford the bill. So the invoice is going to the dad. But how do you do in that situation? This dad was stuck. You can't pull the child out of school and then he's overburdened by this big bill or invoice or statement. How do you do that? Because obviously I think the communication between them wasn't that great.
So if you're getting to a situation like that where things are really bad, let's say there was a co-parenting plan in place, one parent is now disregarding it, and you really are at a deadlock, then I would say now it's time to approach the courts, because our courts, they call them the upper guardians of our kids of the country. They always have the best interests of the kids at heart, which is very important, of course. And then it's time. Can it be settled in court? Maybe it's enough for the other parent to see, okay, this parent is taking it seriously, maybe now's the time to settle. Otherwise, if it goes to the full, all the way to the end where a judge is ultimately the one who needs to make the decision, then sometimes it has to go that far.
Sometimes it has to. But is that applicable when there's a parenting plan, or even if there isn't?
So it's really in both. If the parenting plan is not being adhered to, or one parent wants to change it, of course, like we said, situations always change. Money changes, locations change. For instance, one parent moves. For instance, like that.
For instance,
yes. And
what is the role of family advocates? And someone was saying to me, this could be very expensive, and ordinary single dads are not going to afford it if there is a break in communication, is a disagreement around access to the child. Do you have to go to the family advocate, or you can just go to an attorney?
So, firstly, a family advocate is free, which is wonderful.
Is it free? Oh, that's great.
Our family advocates are free. Like I said, their offices are situated. There's one per each province. Or
So
I think there's actually a few more than that. It's easy just to Google.
So they're supported by government, is it?
Correct, basically. Services are completely free, so that is always nice to get a family advocate to intervene. They'll come, they'll do their own little reports, they interview parents.
Do the assessment.
And then they give, it's not as high as an order, if I can put that, but I would say a recommendation. And then
to both parents.
To both parents. So they'll say, okay, we think mom should have this amount of things she should be doing. Dad should be contributing this in terms of maintenance. Can we now draw up a co-parenting agreement on these?
So they would interview each parent individually, or both of them sometimes.
Both of them sometimes together. I think it just largely depends on the
just to get
situation.
Data and to get information.
I think they are very. They have expertise in what they're doing because they've been doing it for so long. So I think they know how to handle. So
and they know the common issues
that they deal with. Of course. So if parents then can do a parenting plan based on the family advocate's recommendation, they can then register that parenting plan with the family advocate. And that's when it becomes almost as the same, well, not almost, it is basically the same level as an order of court.
But but where do you register it? Do you register in the court?
At the family advocate's office.
At the family advocate's office.
Yes. So
you don't have to go to court for that.
No. So that's a nice way to avoid court if you can. If one of the parents is not happy with the family advocate's recommendations and they don't want to do a co-parenting plan on that basis, they'll then approach the children's court, and then there'll still be this family advocate report that can then be submitted to the court.
Yes.
This report where a magistrate will take into consideration, and obviously the most important is the best interest of the child.
Yeah. For our viewers, I've been saying this a lot, that I'm going to ask Monica this question around custody and how custody decisions get made in the courts. And usually during breakups or separations, courts will advise or recommend custody to be to the mother. And I want to ask you this. Of course, advocates, judges come from society. There must be stereotypes around believing that fathers are not inherently competent or have the ability to raise or nurture kids. Why do courts still insist that custody should be for the mom?
So I would say,
Even when moms can't financially support the kids.
So I would say this has actually changed a lot recently.
Has it? Okay.
Yes.
That's good
But
news.
there's still the interpretation
Okay.
of previously where courts would automatically just
Automatically.
all right to mom. It's no longer the circumstance. So
Ah.
basically, like I said now, there's certain things that qualify a dad as having automatic rights. So
Okay.
that being when if the parents were married at the time of the child's conception or
Yeah.
birth or any time in between that period, automatic rights. So that means you are a joint holder with the mom of parental rights and responsibilities. So that includes contact, care,
Yeah.
guardianship, all of
Guardianship.
that. Now the issue with, well, not so much an issue, but unmarried dads, so if they were never
Unmarried
married,
dads.
unmarried
Okay.
dads, so children born out of wedlock,
Wedlock,
that's not
yeah.
even so much used anymore.
Yeah, it's not.
So if mom and dad were in a committed relationship at the time of the child's birth, automatic rights, those same automatic rights that are afforded to married fathers,
Sure.
same in that circumstance.
It's same, okay.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if that dad consents or applies to be identified as the biological father at the time of the birth, those rights are automatic once again. And then the last requirement for a dad, an unmarried father, to get automatic rights is where he's paid damages or he's contributing to the upbringing and
Yes.
he's recognized that child and he has been contributing and upbringing since the child's
Since
birth,
the child
basically.
was born. Yeah, you talk about contributing to upbringing. I got a case, one of the single dads approached me and asked this, could this network help? I pay maintenance. He told me the figure, but I also pay 100% of the school fees. So I want to know what the makeup of this maintenance number is for. And by the way, how do I know that the mother, by the way, the child lives with the mom. How do I know that the mother is also contributing the equal amount? In those circumstances, what would you advise? Should there be a common account or a separate account? And how do you ensure that both parents contribute the equal amount to that maintenance?
So that is also quite a big topic that comes up with a lot of the single dads that I deal with is how do we split the maintenance? Who's paying for what? It's
Who's paying for what?
Yeah. So firstly, if you're joint co-holders, it's only right that it should be 50-50.
Yeah.
But obviously, it all depends on financial circumstances of both parties. So in this circumstance, let's say dad's really not coping and mom has the means to contribute, she should be contributing to the school fees.
Sure.
So if she's not and he wants to take this further and he's tried to speak to her and it's just not happening, then's the time to apply to children's court. But it also depends what is in place. So if you already have a maintenance order in place, you're then going to need to apply for a variance order.
A variance. But if it does not exist, then you can go to the children's
Yes,
court.
and you can go to the children's court.
In terms of maintenance, does it have to be 50-50 or does it depend on who has custody?
So it largely depends on the parties, I would say, and their abilities.
All right.
So
The affordability?
yes. So when you are going to the children's courts and maintenance courts, the court takes into consideration, they ask for salary slips, banking details,
Okay.
income, they want to know.
check
Yes.
affordability.
So
Yeah.
if the mom is putting pressure on the dad to be contributing, let's say 80% of the expenses and he's really not coping, whereas she's got the
Yeah.
financial means but she's not,
Yeah.
this is something that the court will look at, they'll compare. And then
Thanks.
I just want to touch, you also
Sure.
said, how can it be regulated? How can
How
a
can
dad
it be regulated?
how can a dad
can
be
it be like a
yes.
formal
So
arrangement? Yes.
you can make provision for this in your co-parenting plan where
Yeah.
maybe mom, either you are the one buying the groceries or you the one, there's records of everything nowadays.
Yeah, yeah.
Receipts are for everything. You get a school statement for school fees.
So
Everything
you can get all of the data.
medical,
available.
anything medical is statement related. There's documents for everything. So, you have the right to ask mom, I want to see the proof. show me the
I
proof.
want to see the proof.
I want to see the receipts. Show me what you're buying. Instead, are you
What
buying
you buy.
makeup with the money I'm giving you for our child?
That's what
or-
most of the dads are saying, that they're
Of
buying
course.
hair or they're buying weaves or they're going to do their nails
So,
using
yeah,
using
ask
maintenance
for proof.
money. There's a teenage single dad that wrote to us through our platforms and said, I'm 18 years old. I happen to have a child with my girlfriend. I don't have a job right now. We just finished matric. She lives in Mpumalanga. I live in Joburg. She now says, because I don't provide maintenance, I can't access the child. I'm not allowed to see the child. What do you advise in circumstances like those?
Okay, so in no way is a mom allowed to do that. You cannot cut off the one
Because-
for the other. So you
okay.
cannot
You
deny
can't.
the contact even if somebody is not contributing maintenance. That's not in a mom's power to just decide
Sure.
that. If she has an issue with the maintenance aspect, she must then
She can
herself,
approach- she
the
can
maintenance
approach
courts, of
maintenance
course, and then
court.
they can be the ones to decide what he should be contributing based on what he submits, all his financial records, what he can afford.
Yes.
And they'll be the ones to make that decision. But in terms of contact, cannot just cut
She
it
can't,
off.
yeah.
No.
But what does the boy, the 18-year-old boy, has as a recourse to force her, not to force her, but maybe to make her allow him access?
So then again,
What
this
can
is
he
where the children's court comes into play
Okay.
again. He goes there, he says, Mom's not allowing me access.
Yeah.
I want access to my child. I want
To my
contact. Here's
So you can approach the children's court.
correct.
Oh, okay.
Correct.
But the family advocate doesn't get involved in those kinds of
So
circumstances.
they can, a family advocate is largely when the parties can come to some sort of agreement at the
But
end.
not when they're not talking to each
When
other.
they're not talking, you can still get the family advocate involved
Okay.
because then you'll have that report from the family advocate,
Or
which can
so
then
he
be
or she will
submitted.
write a report and submit. So you can
Yes.
use that information to approach
Correct.
the children's court.
Yes, and
yeah?
you can then, obviously it does get more costly, but there are other things that can be
Yes.
involved, such as, psychologists, clinical psychologists, social workers, who can also make reports and recommendations, who will help the case of how to decide how that contact should be.
Yeah. So the first recourse, I mean, like you said earlier, if family advocates are free and they're provided by government, it would be the first stop, I would imagine. But just to reiterate, the mother has no right to deny access to the child because the father doesn't pay maintenance.
Correct.
Can we get that right?
That's correct.
Because most mothers would say, you do nothing for this boy or girl, you therefore are not gonna be able to see us. And because I did reply to this young man, I said, as far as I know, just because you don't pay maintenance doesn't mean you're not allowed to see. Legitimately, you have rights to the child. What about circumstances where moms make financial decisions away without the involvement of the father? I just made an example earlier around deciding on a new school. She gets this young man registered at a school which happens to be more expensive. What does the father in that instance have as a fallback to basically force the mother not to make those decisions in the future, or even to reverse the decision? Or is there such a possibility?
There definitely is a possibility. I always suggest trying to settle those types of things out of court.
Out of court, okay?
Correct, and that's where you can either approach mom directly or with the use of attorney. That's where an attorney is a nice addition to add, because they, like I said, emotions are not involved there. They come on
Yeah.
record, they say this is the situation, you've gone and you've done a joint decision making by yourself,
By yourself.
which is not on.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's actually unacceptable.
No, of course.
And they do know this is not acceptable, but I think they do it just to spite the father or to create a financial burden
Yeah.
on the father, which is basically unfair.
Yeah, that's 100%, and it's not putting the best interest of the
Yeah.
child, at heart. So like I say, always best to try and settle out of court. Dad can go, these are the options. Can we find a school together that we both agree on that's within my financial means?
Yes.
If mom's saying, no, I don't care what you have to say, I'm keeping this child in the school, you will pay. That is not, it also, again, depends what your co-parenting plan says, if you have one in place. If you are joint decision makers, then basically if that agreement has been registered with the family advocate, mom's basically in contempt of that.
In contempt of that. But I think it comes down to communication. I mean, Carl and I, in our previous conversation, he was talking a lot about the criticality and the importance of communicating. But again, when you've reached a point where you don't communicate, unfortunately, you have to go around and get assistance somewhere else.
That's when you then look at your children's court.
At your children's court.
You can also go to the High Court for orders such as
order?
specifically relating to guardianship and contact orders.
Yeah.
But obviously that is a much more expensive route to go. So it is always best to approach the children's court first. See, can the children's court make a decision based on contacts where both parties will adhere to that type of agreement.
Yeah. You touched earlier around visitation rights. In single dads, in the single dads network, we get a lot of questions around that. Sometimes I'm not allowed to come and see my child. I would plan with the mother when I plan to come and fetch him, and then she says, no, we've got something to do with this weekend. Next week, there's another excuse. What do we do in circumstances like that? Should visitation be incorporated in the parenting plan, or is there a separate thing on the side that you can create?
Should definitely be incorporated in the parenting plan. Exact days, for instance, can dad have the child every second weekend? Yes.
Yeah.
In situations like that, I would also recommend document everything in case you need it later. WhatsApps, SMSs, emails, screenshot, get records of them. If you ever need to approach the courts, there's your proof to say, look, mom's not allowing me access. Here's record specific dates, times, incidents, what happened, even go to the police station, do an affidavit to that effect. Just, compile a record just for yourself in case it ever gets bad, but hopefully not. Otherwise, your co-parenting plan should definitely make provision.
Should make provision. It should actually be part of it. Last thing, once on a dad said to me, my ex-girlfriend doesn't like my son visiting me because I'm going to introduce him to my new girlfriend. And I don't like that idea because you're going to meet another new girlfriend, and he's 6 years old. I don't like him exposed to so many ladies after me. Do they have rights to prevent us single dads meeting new people and maybe new people in our lives meeting our kids?
Look, I think that's also something that then communication should come into play there. Where can mom and dad have an agreement? Because obviously relationships after a breakup are natural, further relation.
But now
of course.
The child is part of your life.
So I wouldn't say they can specifically withhold that. That's where it is important, to then have communication.
But do they have a legal right to say my child can't meet your new boyfriend or your new husband?
Not specifically. If they really wanted to make a song and dance about it, they could then, it depends. Is it causing any harm to the child?
Is it harmful to the child in any way? And because then you need, to your point earlier, then you need evidence.
Yes, 100%.
And of course, if the new person in your relationship is ill-treating the child, there's evidence of that, there's a different story. Definitely. But she would just say up front, I don't want my son to meet someone new in your life, and without any explanation or reason. And I was wondering what the legal framework says about that.
Look, you can't really. If dad is a joint co-holder of rights,
because he has access to the child. You can't say, you can only visit me when my girlfriend is not there.
No, 100%.
It's just not practical.
No, not at all.
Great. How would you advise, now as we close, Monica, how would you advise some of the dads out there that, of course, are grappling with these issues that we've touched on, to leverage a network of this kind, support groups like ours, to get help and even access to family advocates, attorneys like yourselves? Is there, in a way, and I did say this to you, that we would like you to get involved with our network and put case studies and documentation and articles on our website so that our network can get access. Is there strategy or recommendation that you can make for them to leverage this network?
Look, I definitely think it's still a growing thing.
Sure.
I think, I must be honest, yours is the first network and support kind of group to an effect that I have heard of. So I do think more should be implemented.
Yeah.
Because at this point, I don't feel like dads have enough access to that kind of forum. And that's a lot of the time why they end up approaching attorneys.
Yes.
But otherwise, you know, there's so much research and case law that dads can do themselves. On the internet, Google is wonderful. As well as all the forms necessary needed to approach a family advocate. There's advice. There's so many articles currently published.
It's all available online.
It's all available.
And how do they reach you for advice? And outside, I always say to my colleagues in the network, we are basically a conduit to connect our forum and our network with specialists like yourself. But once you guys are in conversation, we step away because of confidentiality issues. Are you accessible? Maybe a website, email that you want to
Of course,
share with
our
us?
firm does have a website. It's if you just also want Google again, Clifford Levin Attorneys.
Yeah.
We're actually down the road from where we are today, based in Norwood. We're always available. Phone calls, you know, like I said, we
set up an appointment.
of course
ask for advice.
anytime, even on Teams, anything.
Great.
We work around
That's
dads
great.
and whoever needs help really.
And you'd be willing to share details through our network,
Of course.
then we can publish on our website, then you would be accessible.
That would be amazing. I'm so happy
Thank
to
you so
help
much.
dads.
I like that. Guys, watching and listening, and again, there's so much that we could not cover with Monica around legal issues and legal strategies affecting dads. And if you've got questions and you'd like to explore one of the topics that we could not finish on, please go to dadconnections.org and follow us on our socials and put questions there, and then we'll be able to connect you with the right people such as Monica. Monica, I need to thank you again. Thanks for your time,
Thank you so much.
and we'll chat soon.
Thank you for having me.
Likewise.